So it's just the one box this week. It's a kind of big box, and I think there should be a small handful of items in it, but yeah, can't say for certain. What? So let's choose a bit of an order to these. Let's do it this way. Since I knew this shipped, a bit curious about this series since the imagery for this has been around for a while. Some of you have asked in the past, since it's a Funimation release, that says it's both a Region A and a Region B. Feels a bit light, so I'm wondering what the contents of this actually are. This is what the back actually looks like. It's just the slip insert. 12 episodes plus OVA on 2 DVDs. Alright, so that's part of why it feels so light. It's because we've had things that have been slightly more compressed. So here we have the DVDs. Funimation's changed their card. On the inside we've got more artwork. It's not a reversible cover though per se, but we've got 2 discs. I guess I'm going to hold on to that for some reason. It's different. Can't get rid of it. And next up we got the Blu-ray discs. Once again, we've got insert in the middle with an image, and the Blu-ray discs are blue. So I must admit, since this is a series I've been curious about, this will probably have a good chance of being watched. Actually, this would probably too. This is Black Lagoon OVA series. This is only Region A, 6 episodes on 1 DVD, or 6 episodes on 1 Blu-ray. We've got a slip cover. Now, I think I remember this character. It's been a long time since I've watched Black Lagoon. But yeah, we see here one of these is a DVD, this one is a DVD, and so this would be the Blu-ray. Very curious about that one. Next up we've got the second Berserk movie, The Battle for Doldry. I've not watched the first one, so I can't help but think that I really ought to. I mean, I've watched the Berserk series. It was a good series, and I'm kind of curious what happened after the series, since the series never quite completed. Could have reached a halfway point. I don't know, but for the most part, the Blu-ray and the DVD look the same. If we do that, then we got a strange alignment of face. And as we can see, the insides are pretty much the same. Oh, and since this is a Viz release, naturally it should have an English dub. I guess since I've been reading off, this is also a Region A only. I don't see anywhere it says that it's dubbed. Oh well. Next up is the Sentai Filmworks release of The Garden of Words, which is a Makoto Shinkai work, I think, unless I'm mistaken. I bet it says on the back. But before I go to do that, we're going to open them up. Once again, region A only. Makoto Shinkai. Yep, right there. So he would be the person who made Voices of a Distant Star, The Place Promised in Our Early Days, 5 centimeters per second. Somewhat older, she and her cat. And naturally, since these are Sentai releases, which include a Blu-ray release, audio is English. There's also commentary included. Interesting. 46 minutes. Just the one disc. Whereas the DVD version apparently has 2 discs. This second disc being the same artwork as the one on the Blu-ray. Now I'll swap these. So there we go. It's a small update, but it's a nice update. I think these are all things I kind of want to watch. And since they're all English dubbed, I don't really have any reason to not watch them other than that I might want to rewatch Black Lagoon first before I watch Roberta's Blood Trail. Or maybe not. I'll figure it out. I forgot to do that. So let's see. I've also not watched a whole lot of anime this past week. Mostly because I think I mentioned that I was... No, I don't know if I mentioned. Did I mention I was trying to watch Stargate Atlantis? Yeah, I'm halfway through the 4th season right now, so making good progress there. But I did watch 2 anime. First of all, I watched an anime movie called Enchanted Journey. I forget what the Japanese name was. And... what to say about it? It was interesting. It wasn't... It didn't strike me as particularly awesome, but there was something nostalgic about it. Something about the way the animals moved that was very reminiscent of the way Unico was animated, I think. It could just be that's the time frame, or it might have been animated by similar people. I didn't look into too much detail. Story-wise, it's an interesting story. It's kind of interesting that Orson Welles played a voice in that one. It was one of his roles just before Transformers the movie, apparently. But you know, all that aside, the story itself is kind of interesting. It was interesting how morbid it would choose to be sometimes. It was a bit unexpected. I kind of felt like if there was any problem with it, it's that it was a little weak on the exploration of that concept while having it in there. I mean, I've talked about things before where I like an anime that kind of puts on an innocent face but does some rather dark stuff. And this anime is kind of neat in the way that it does that as well. But I also feel like since it's a moment-to-moment sort of thing, it doesn't have the ability to really focus on those concepts per se. Like, the basic story is we got a squirrel... No, sorry, it was a chipmunk. Is that right? I guess it was a chipmunk that's always lived in the city, grew up in the city, but then decides it wants to go out to the forest, so it goes on a journey to, well, because he has an actual gender, and that's kind of relevant to the story, I guess. He wants to go out to the forest that he's heard about, that apparently hundreds of thousands of chipmunks live. I mean, it's kind of scary just how many chipmunks they draw on there. I mean, that looks like it should destroy an ecosystem, but... all that aside, you know, there's an entire element of that where the chipmunk that grows up in the city, of course, is going to be mostly safer, especially if they're like a pet and they're being kept indoors and stuff like that. So that's kind of where the series' morbidness comes from, is that it's really quite dangerous out there. But, like I said, the thing that's kind of lacking is the fact that the character never comments about the fact that, well, maybe they do just a little, I think. I don't know. That said, if there's one thing that makes me kind of break out of completely getting into it and saying, oh yeah, this is definitely a thorough message, it does want to do one thing kind of silly, which... So there's a couple of predators that they encounter along the way, of course, and they all have the same problem of their eyes are always constantly super open, like they are Arnold Schwarzenegger from the movie Total Recall. Don't know if the more recent Total Recall did the same thing, but yeah, non-blinking eyes that look like they're about to explode out of the head. Also, the cat's mouth reminded me more of a kind of a leech mouth, almost like that the God Warrior from Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind. I mean, not exactly like it, but it kind of reminded me more of that than like a cat. And then the other things are just... Yeah, it seemed to be a common trait. And maybe it could have worked out, but for some reason, watching it here, something about the eyes just didn't really do it for me in terms of being dangerous so much as silly. And, you know, sometimes that can happen. I know there was like a... somebody who created a short little video that was a horror story that was based off of a horror story somebody told in a comment. And I think a lot of other people kind of agreed that they didn't necessarily feel creeped out by it. And for me, I know I didn't feel creeped out by it because it was really hard to tell that the other strange person in the story that was told was necessarily menacing. Like maybe there was something about the grin that wasn't quite, oh man, it intends to do something to me. So instead it just seemed more like somebody just trying to mess with another person and the other person just kind of freaking out because of it. And because of that interpretation, you know, that seemed silly instead of funny. And, you know, there could be a lot of situations where sometimes there's a thin border between scary and funny, I guess. Oh, well, enough talk about that movie. Again, it's strange because it kind of hits me in a place where it's like, yeah, this is triggering a lot of nostalgic things, even though I've never seen it before, but I can't necessarily say that it's so awesome that I'll just always choose to rewatch it on my own like I would or Unico and the Island of Magic, or Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, or something like that. Well, the other one was Another. That's the other thing I watched, the other anime I watched, and that was actually pretty good. I mean, there's a part of me that went into watching it hoping it was going to be a particularly scary anime, mostly because my brother wanted to watch it while a specific family member was present, because she's prone to screaming when scary things happen. So it's really fun to have her around when the brothers are playing Resident Evil, or it's one reason we love to watch ghost hunts, because there's a certain kind of scary that just clicks and makes a lot of sense, as in I understand why she's afraid of that because I can understand that fear itself. So when I watched Another, I was hoping that because my brother thought she might, since my brother wanted her present, maybe it was that kind of scary, but I didn't really think it was. Maybe a bit more reminiscent of when they cry, but not as intentionally grotesque as when they cry or anything like that. When they cry, tried to push some boundaries there, whereas Another played with different concepts. And maybe it's saying too much to say that, because it does take a while before it starts saying, yeah, you know, people, horrible things might start happening to people. It kind of hints at it, but the good thing about it is it kept me guessing the whole time, and honestly, it did a really good job of keeping me guessing. overall, you know, even if it wasn't scary like I thought it was going to be, it was definitely very worth watching it because it still kept me very interested and curious, and I knew it was playing with me and I couldn't figure it out, period. You know, it's always nice when something's able to do that for you. So, those are the two anime I watched. Yeah, again, I've been powering through Stargate Atlantis. And if there's anything to say about that, it's not bad. It's just not Stargate SG-1. SG-1 was something else, I gotta say. But, like I said, I haven't been watching a whole lot of stuff. I guess I could also mention that I watched that Rooster Teeth animation Ruby, RWBY. It's not exactly anime, but you can tell it's very anime inspired. In fact, the animation reminds me of the MMD stuff I've seen. I think that's the program that does it. So I'm wondering if those programs are closely related, but this one is an animation program. And, well, it's hard to say what to say about that one as well, because it's not a very complete series. And it's, sometimes you can kind of feel like it's trying to force that Japanese anime inspiration in there, just a couple places. But it's intriguing. I am curious to see more of what it's going to do. And for me, the jury is still a bit out on what I think about the action in it. It's not done anything to make me think it's bad over-the-top action, but it's not done anything to convince me that it's the kind of action I prefer. I think I've mentioned this before with things like Black Rock Shooter or the fan-made Dead or Alive versus Final Fantasy animation. I think that was called Dead Fantasy or something like that. You know, things like those don't really do it for me because I feel like it's people... It's animated so that there's people doing things. And it's really more what it comes down to because it doesn't feel like there's necessarily... It doesn't feel like there's anything really at stake in those battles. Even though they kind of are, it just feels like, oh my god, if you're going to get hit by this big-ass sword... You know, the thing that makes a big-ass sword awesome is that, you know, it can chop big-ass things in half or something like that. There's a lot of danger to a big-ass sword. So if you're able to use a big-ass sword because, you know, you shouldn't be able to move it around, that can be pretty awesome. Or if you can use it to kind of convince somebody that, yeah, they've trained so much. Or if somebody's using it against you, then, you know, oh my god, I'll be chopped in half if somebody chops me with it. So, you know, there's kind of an element of, you know there's something at stake if it doesn't do something silly like somebody gets chopped with a big-ass sword. It doesn't really have any effect. And Dead Fantasy does a lot of that. And Black Rock Shooter does a lot of that where, you know, it's like, giant machine gun, explosions, and, oh, well, that just did some damage to the character. But they're not near death or something like that. But again, Ruby hasn't done anything like that yet, as far as I can tell. So, right now, it's kind of at a middle spot where I'm kind of hoping that they kind of remind us of the vulnerability of the characters so that we can appreciate how good they are, I guess. But it's not been really action-focused per se. There was just some action in the first episode. And that can work out because, like, I mean, the Cowboy Bebop movie kind of began with a deliberate action scene where it's just like, oh yeah, by the way, this is Spike and Jet. They're badasses. And that kind of works for an introduction. So, how the series goes, we'll find out. It's not really anime, but since it's so anime-inspired, I guess it makes sense to kind of mention it and talk about it here. So, yeah, there we go. That's pretty much everything. I guess upcoming anime kind of updates. I'm trying to think if there's anything particularly noteworthy. I know Kick Heart packages are still being sent out, apparently. They're hoping, I guess, to finish shipping them all out next week, I thought. And the way they're talking sounds like they're going from the lower tiers up to the higher ones, which could make sense since you have a lot of materials the higher up you go to ship out. And I'm not very high on that one since I was at a money squeeze when that kickstart happened. But I'm kind of hoping that maybe my stuff will still ship out kind of soonish. And maybe here within a couple weeks. Hoping. I've got something else coming in from overseas that will be an interesting thing to talk about and explore. And something tells me that the Little Witch Academia 1 Blu-ray release I need to pay attention to, because that one may not be acquirable through any of my normal channels. I'll have to pay a little bit close attention to that because I'm not entirely sure how that will work. With any luck, maybe they'll do it through TRSI. Maybe they won't be able to. But people have started talking a little bit about that, and I'm wondering if that could be showing up on the radar really soon. Other than that, I'm continuing to not go and buy old anime DVDs until dental work is done. Or halfway through that, so once that's over, I guess we'll find out what happens. This may be an opportunity to get certain things taken care of, because well, I just have a couple of things I've been needing or wanting to buy, not needing. Just things that would make things nicer around here. But maybe by November or December I will be able to start catching up on old anime DVDs again. Unless certain things cause me to say, oh, no, I'm going to go get this. And that's actually the one out of the overseas import that's coming in. It's about that, and I'll explain that when it arrives. It'll be interesting. So, other than that, I guess y'all have a nice week.